June 1314. The Scottish Lowlands. A ragged force of roughly 6,000 men, underfed, poorly outfitted, a mixture of farmers and hardened fighters, stands in the path of one of the most powerful war machines the medieval world had ever produced. On one side, Robert the Bruce, a king who barely possessed the kingdom he claimed. On the other, 20,000 English soldiers, among them the most feared heavy cavalrymen on the continent, thousands of Welsh longbowmen capable of punching arrows clean through armor, and wave upon wave of seasoned infantry. By every reasonable measure, manpower, equipment, battlefield experience, this should have been a straightforward English victory. A Scottish triumph seemed not merely unlikely, but laughable. And yet, across 2 extraordinary days, one of the most staggering military reversals in the entire medieval era would unfold on this very ground. This is the story of Bannockburn. To grasp the full weight of this confrontation, we need to turn back the clock. Scotland by this point had ceased to function as an independent nation. Edward I of England, a ruler who earned the grim nickname the Hammer of the Scots with terrifying thoroughness, had forced the country into submission through systematic brutality. Scottish lords were compelled to kneel and swear loyalty to the English crown. Those who refused faced execution. The celebrated resistance fighter William Wallace, who had rallied the country's spirit more than once, was ultimately captured, tortured, hanged, and his remains put on public display as a warning to anyone contemplating defiance. Scotland, to all outward appearances, had been extinguished as a sovereign force. Its identity, its pride, and its independence had all been ground down under the English boot. Yet even in the darkest periods of occupation, embers of resistance continued to smolder. The Scots had not forgotten what they once were. All that was missing was a figure capable of reigniting the flame, someone reckless enough, determined enough, and shrewd enough to challenge the most powerful military power in the British Isles. That figure was about to step forward, and when he did, nothing would ever quite be the same again. Robert the Bruce was a Scottish nobleman of mixed Scottish and Norman heritage, and he held a credible claim to the throne of Scotland, though the road he took to assert it was anything but straightforward. In 1306, he committed an act that nearly destroyed him before his journey had truly begun. He murdered a political rival inside a church, a sacrilege that brought both royal fury and a papal excommunication down upon his head simultaneously. English forces moved swiftly to crush him. He was hunted across the Scottish countryside, a fugitive with few friends and fewer resources. By any standard assessment, his cause was finished. But Bruce refused to behave like a finished man. Against all expectation, he emerged from hiding and had himself crowned King of Scots. The English reaction was mockery. A king without land, without soldiers, without even the church's blessing. It seemed the performance of a desperate and deluded man. English nobles laughed. Edward's commanders were dismissive. The joke, however, was destined to age very badly. Over the years that followed, Bruce waged a grinding guerrilla campaign across Scotland. He understood, with exceptional clarity, that he could not face the English in open, pitched battle and survive. Their resources and numbers would crush him every time. So instead, he harassed them relentlessly, striking supply convoys, dismantling their garrison system castle by castle, cultivating local loyalty wherever he moved. He wore the occupiers down through patience and persistence, rather than brute force. By 1314, nearly the whole of Scotland acknowledged him. Only a single major stronghold remained stubbornly in English hands, Stirling Castle, and it was around this one fortress that the entire crisis would crystallize. Stirling was not merely a symbolic prize. It was a strategic linchpin, controlling the main overland corridor between the Northern Highlands and the Southern Lowlands. Whoever held Stirling held Scotland's spine. Bruce's brother Edward had been besieging it for months without managing to take it. In an act of considerable boldness, or recklessness, depending on one's perspective, he struck a deal with the English garrison commander. If no relief force arrived by the 24th of June, the castle would be surrendered. It was, in effect, an open challenge to Edward II of England, and one the English king was constitutionally incapable of ignoring. When word of this arrangement reached Edward II, he responded precisely as Bruce had anticipated. Allowing so critical a fortress to fall without contest would represent an international humiliation, an admission that England could not protect what it claimed. He mobilized the largest army England had fielded in years, 20,000 troops in total, including 2,500 elite heavy cavalry representing the flower of English knighthood, 3,000 Welsh archers renowned across Europe for their lethal accuracy, and substantial forces of foot soldiers hardened by years of campaign. This force marched north through the summer heat, supremely confident in its overwhelming superiority. It fully expected to scatter the Scottish rebels, as English armies had done repeatedly in the past. Robert the Bruce had not been idle during these preparations. He understood that to survive this encounter, let alone win it, he would need to negate every advantage the English possessed. He selected his battlefield with uncommon care, a compressed strip of terrain flanked on one side by the Bannockburn, a swift-running stream, and on the other by the dense woodland of New Park. In this geography, the English could not use their numbers to encircle him. Their cavalry could not sweep wide and strike from the flanks. The killing ground would be narrow, confined, and deeply unfavorable to the attacker. His men dug thousands of small pits across the open ground, concealed beneath a skin of grass and branches. Invisible traps designed to shatter the legs of charging warhorses and send their armored riders crashing to earth. He drilled his infantry relentlessly in the Schiltron formation, in which soldiers formed dense, rotating circles bristling with 12-foot spears in every direction, a human hedgehog impervious to cavalry attack when properly maintained. The psychological preparation was as deliberate as the physical. Bruce wanted his men not merely capable, but convinced they could win. The English arrived on the afternoon of the 23rd of June, and the battle produced its first unforgettable moment almost immediately. An English knight named Henry de Bohun, spotting Bruce riding ahead of his troops on a small pony and carrying nothing but a battle axe, recognized a chance for glory that seemed too good to be true. He couched his lance and charged at full gallop. Bruce held his ground until the very last instant, then twisted aside. As de Bohun thundered past, the Scottish king stood in his stirrups and brought his axe down in a single terminal stroke. The blow split de Bohun's helmet and skull in one motion. The axe handle shattered from the force. A moment of stunned silence held both armies. Then the Scots erupted in a roar that rolled across the field. Their king had just killed one of England's most celebrated knights in open single combat. The effect on Scottish morale was immediate and electric. Dawn broke on the 24th of June, and Edward II ordered his army forward. The English advance was forced by the terrain into a tight, channeled press. Cavalry in front, archers and infantry packed behind them with almost no room to deploy. The heavy horse moved with the confidence of warriors who had broken Scottish formations many times before. They expected the Schiltrons to buckle and the men inside to break. Instead, the spear walls held with absolute resolution. The first wave of knights crashed directly into them. Horses collapsed, screaming, hurling riders to the ground. Those behind had no room to check their momentum and piled into the chaos ahead. Warhorses fell into the concealed pits, their riders tumbling forward in full armor, largely unable to rise unaided from the trampled earth. The Welsh archers, who might have unraveled the Scottish formations with a sustained volley, found the terrain working savagely against them. The two sides were so tightly compressed that shooting into the mass risked killing English soldiers just as readily as Scottish ones. Bruce had held 500 light horsemen in reserve for precisely this contingency. He unleashed them against the archers with sudden ferocity. With the heavy cavalry swallowed by the chaos at the front, the bowmen had no one to shield them, and quickly abandoned the field entirely. The most dangerous English tactical asset had been neutralized. Hour after hour, the deadlock persisted and intensified. Men at the spearhead fought on through mounting exhaustion, while thousands more crowded uselessly from behind, pressing forward without comprehending what lay ahead. The summer heat was punishing for men encased in steel. The fallen accumulated until advancing meant stepping over the dead. Then Bruce committed his reserve, fresh Highland fighters under Angus Ogg, straight into the heart of the struggle. And at that precise moment, a new mass of figures appeared on a hilltop nearby. In truth, it was the Scottish baggage train, servants and camp followers armed with whatever implements they had grabbed. To the spent and desperate English soldiers below, it looked exactly like a second Scottish army entering the engagement. That was the breaking point. Someone in the English ranks shouted, "Treachery!" The cry caught and spread. "Retreat!" became a torrent. King Edward II was hauled bodily from the field by his own guards, barely ahead of the collapse. The withdrawal became a catastrophe. Men shed weapons and armor as they ran. Hundreds flung themselves into the Bannockburn and drowned, dragged beneath the surface by the weight of their equipment. Thousands more were cut down in the pursuit that followed. Over 4,000 English soldiers perished that day. Dozens of nobles were taken prisoner, and the ransoms Bruce extracted would finance his kingdom for years to come. Scottish losses came to fewer than 500 men. Bannockburn was far more than a single victory. It shattered the foundational English assumption that disciplined Scots infantry could never stand against professional cavalry in overwhelming numbers. It proved that preparation, terrain, and tactical intelligence could overcome superior force. Robert the Bruce stepped off that battlefield as the uncontested and undeniable King of Scots. England would spend another 14 years attempting to reverse the verdict. It could not. In 1328, the Treaty of Edinburgh gave formal recognition to what Bannockburn had already declared in blood and iron. Scotland was a free nation, and no army of any size was ever going to change that.